Yep. Yep.
All right.
Hear me? Stream can hear me. Hey Jack, Rummels, Rum Dog.
Dude,
How do we sound?
Dude. All right. Well, that really
No, no.
exposes us as podcast hosts.
Hey,
So also turn the angle, right? Because now it's just
yeah.
on you. 20 seconds delayed. Walking out. Anyways, yeah, sorry about that. We think we're good on audio on our sixth try, but yeah, dude.
Let's go.
Anyways, you want to kick us off?
Yeah. Driveline R&D Podcast, episode 61. It's been a while. We said we were gonna be back in June, but summer really heated up. No pun intended. Didn't have a lot of time to get this stuff put together. We're hoping to make a resurgence here pretty shortly. Still planning on hitting a bunch of the intern episodes and everything, and a lot has been going on. Start with some sports science updates. We are now fully functional with.
Really quick, I was gonna say, I think like maybe in 2 weeks, we're at least for now, we're probably planning on within the episode in like 2 weeks, and we'll probably do something. I got them all hyped about we might do. I mean, leave some comments in the thread, even if you're one of the people that's going to be on the podcast. But like, what the format is, we could have everyone in the same room, but like have one intern kind of on a hot seat for a couple minutes, then kind of rinse and repeat.
Yeah, for sure. Also, if anybody missed it, we're drinking Hazy Little Things from Sierra Nevada. 4th time introducing it, but that's okay.
Yeah, this is my 4th beer.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, so in the last few months, sports science and over in the new lab, which we talked a lot about previously before the summer, before we took a break. We're just getting it going at that point, but now it's basically fully functional. Its new name is the Launchpad. So we are now collecting force plate data. Force plates are fully functional. Force plate data, motion capture data. Also, we're capturing pulse data, workload data during assessments, which we'll get to very shortly. We're also getting TrackMan data, Rapsodo data, and automatic Edgertronic footage from that's all synced from 4 different perspectives. So that's probably the biggest update for sports science in general. And
what are perspectives? What people's perspectives are we talking
about? Yeah, so we have an overhead view, like kind of rear overhead, and then we have a behind view, and then 2 side views. So we're capturing the closed and open side view for all assessments on the. And we have a full squad right now. Some of them have to go back to school shortly, but I think we have, I don't know, 4 or 5 interns. We have a big sports science department. It's really exciting, working on a lot of fun projects. Actually, I'll drop a couple study teasers. We have one looking into how jump test performance. So all the different types of jumps, broad jumps, vertical jumps, lateral bounds, how it relates to performance in the skill, both pitching and hitting. We have a proprioception awareness study where we're using some occlusion goggles basically to adjust how much visual input athletes have, and we're hoping to see if that has any effect on performance, and see if the amount that your performance changes is a function of playing level and experience. We are also looking into catching studies. So basically from different positions in the squat or not in the squat if you're on a knee, and looking at throwing mechanics and top time and all that stuff. So a bunch of stuff with bat fitting and you name it. We just have a bunch of projects going on, really exciting, mostly in the data collection phase, but hoping to get some analyzed for the winter to be a big deal. A bunch of publications, hopefully blogs at the very.
Yeah. No, we got a bunch of cool stuff going. Lindley covered most of the sports science stuff. On the BB-Ops/data science stuff, we have a couple studies going as well. We have one that I think I've touched. Maybe I don't know if I've touched on this. I guess yeah, because it's been a while. We have a seam height study going. Dr. Barnes Smith, friend of the podcast, sent us over a few very precisely measured baseballs that had slight differences in seam height. So we did Johnny Asel is the lead on this study, but he did a pretty extensive lit review of how we wanted to approach the process and kind of tease out actual differences across the balls. So we have a pretty well laid out study that's going to analyze things from like spin rate differences to can they qualitatively tell the difference between different levels of seam height. We have what other study recently? Oh yeah, a bunch of command based studies, since we now kind of have intended zones data from Inside Edge that we've been playing around with, are looking to sync that with a bunch of like sabermetric type data and put together our own proprietary command metrics. We're building a bunch of stuff based off like missed distance and things like that, from, like I said, from the intended zone data, which is a really exciting data source. That's something we've tried to get for a while. We've also, like Lindley mentioned, some of the onus has been on building the infrastructure to pair all these new data sources, which has involved a lot of planning, a lot of like data engineering pipelines, but we're pretty close to putting it all together. And yeah, like some of the paired data analyses we're going to run probably going to pretty heavily shape like our insights and the way we use them going forward.
Yeah, it's really exciting. Got to make the database, which I currently work most with, is the biomechanics database, is going to be bolstered a bunch with a bunch of metrics. Pretty exciting. You want to?
No. I was going to say, like, along those lines, you want to kind of talk about. I mean, yeah, we have Pulse to talk about, which we launched and tweeted out a bunch. So we're going to try to give you a different perspective on, besides just like kind of rehashing what the corporate account has put out. Although for people that haven't followed that, hopefully this will be a pretty good intro and high level overview. But do you actually want to like take it a mini step back and cover like when we first bought Modus and what were you thinking, and then kind of your involvement then and your involvement now, because that's different. That's definitely different. I mean, for me as well, I was not involved at all. And now I think we have a pretty solid structure going forward. So give them a little bit of history lesson, baby, if they made it through this audio madness.
Yeah, so it was, I think, spring, or I guess late winter of 2020 of last year.
Late winter of 2019.
Oh, yeah. So early 2020.
Yeah.
We acquired Modus, and the first few projects were basically just replicating a good amount of the validation work that has been done outside of Driveline, also the work that has been done within Driveline, expanding on that and basically creating some more rich data sets. As previously we just looked at 5-ounce throws of off speed and fastballs and like 5 pitches per condition basically. So we wanted to kind of improve on that to get a better picture of exactly what is Modus good at, what is Modus not as good at, and how we can leverage it the best. We also like went into it thinking like, let's just use it to integrate with a bunch of things, integrate with Soto or different maybe some other technology with biomechanics to hopefully get a better overall picture, and maybe and from the very beginning, this is still the theme. Currently, we're looking to take this sensor basically and extend what we find from our biomechanics lab into every athlete, every pitcher, every position player, something that they can have access to without having to do the whole shebang in Kent, Washington. Come out here and get the very extensive biomechanics, which we know is very, very valuable. We value it a lot internally for programming and everything. I think it's really good for athletes to do that. But for those who don't have access to that, or they just want to have a better picture over time of their training program, we want to be able to use Modus. We wanted to be able to use Modus to do that. So we kind of progressed from there and realized there was a bunch of like, I don't know, sticking points and things that were a little bit unclear how to get started and get the most use out of Modus. There still are a bunch of features of Modus that are now Pulse, but when we acquired them, there are a bunch of features that are available, but they're not as talked about. They're not as used as they could be. For example, a game day feature where you can do a report on a whole team and it'll basically say, this pitcher can throw, or like if this pitcher throws this many pitches, his ACR is going to be around here. So it's just a good way.
On ratios though.
Yeah, that's a new thing in sports science. The Warren ratios. Shout out Kyle Wasserberger. Anyways, it's just like a way of giving you a decent idea for how much this pitcher should or shouldn't throw. Not down to the pitch count, because we know that it's not that binary. It's not that if you go over this pitch count, you're going to get hurt, or this is a bad idea. It's just kind of get a rough idea for your staff and what's the best. It's the best way to structure like your weekend if you're a travel ball coach, or your weekend if you're a college coach. Like, how are you going feel the team and get through all the innings, and do so in a dominant way. So I think that is a little bit, like, as much as I think useful about the history of Modus. Yeah, no, that's it. And then so 2 weeks ago, I'll just get into the Pulse launch. 2 weeks ago, we released what we're calling Pulse now. Pulse is basically the same sensor. We upgraded the attachment, so there's a strap now instead of a sleeve, and the strap is more comfortable. It's one size fits all, and we believe that it's just going to be easier for athletes to be comfortable using it as much as possible. There are a bunch of feature upgrades and integration with track and everything that we think are really valuable and are going to be good for all of our customers. And we think that it's not only pitchers or like young people, or any single group that can get value out of Pulse. We think it's going to be,
Yeah, we're talking about long snappers
yeah.
using Pulse.
All of baseball. I think there's a lot of applications, and I don't know if you want to just get right into it, or if we talk about some of the things that have changed.
Yeah, we can. I was going to say, even at a more high level overview, Pulse currently spits out 4 main metrics, one of which we kind of deprecated. Spits out torque, elbow torque, that is, arm speed, shoulder rotation, and arm slot. Shoulder rotation we've kind of deprecated. Not super confident in the way it's being measured and calculated. Not a lot of use cases from both internal use and beta user feedback. One cool thing about Pulse also is the fact that we own it has let us gather so much longitudinal data and also feedback on the actual sensor. Like, all these things, like, we know, and this goes for anybody that kind of has a product and is pushing stuff out. Man, it's so hard to manage all that stuff, because there's like user feedback from the hardware side of things, user feedback from the software side of things. There's like product reliability, whether it breaks or doesn't break, or how many we've got to have in our warehouse. We've got to hit all the sales requests. We've got to also market all this stuff, explain it. CR gets calls. People will be like, okay, I saw this shit about Pulse, but what's good? What do I have to do? We have to make it work with our software platform. There are so many things at play that I think, like, I hope we learn a lot of lessons from this launch, just even from a macro organizational level, because we definitely learned a ton from like how to actually project deadlines, handle requests coming in, handle all this feedback. It's so many things to juggle. But yeah, we've deprecated shoulder rotation, so we mainly have torque, arm speed, and arm slot. And coming soon are going to be a bunch of our kind of proprietary workload metrics. We already have. Modus got initially pretty well known for, not just for this, but the acute chronic workload ratio, which is an imperfect way to measure stuff and kind of gives a few arbitrary cutoffs. So we wanted to make things a little bit more tuned to each pitcher, because as we saw a lot with our own internal motion capture Pulse pair data sets, a lot of times there'd be much stronger within subject reliability than like across all data points, right? Like, not all pitchers are going to have their arm speed increase when their torque increased by this much, but for that pitcher, if we have enough data, we can really start fine-tuning that player's like relationship, like that player's relationship between arm speed and torque, and like what the motion capture metrics for that player were and during assessment, and what the Pulse metrics were. So we're pretty pumped to trot out things like expected torque coming out soon, which is just going to give an expected torque metric derived from paired motion capture and Pulse data sets. And I think that's going to be really useful when people look and compare like what the expected torque is versus what the real torque is. Does that mean like, more time off? Does that mean a different path to recovery? Does that mean this pitcher's prepped for this many throws? Pitchers wearing them in game, especially with like ease of integration with other technologies. Maybe someone's throwing like 1.5 miles slower on TrackMan, and we know with all our gathered data and everything that means likely his torque should be dropping by this much, but instead it's up by this much. And like, what does that tell us? So there's a ton of really cool use cases that we're hoping to gather more and more data on and kind of mess around with. But no, super excited. I'm down to talk on the platform stuff really quickly. I was just going to say as a side note, I'm kind of bummed I lost my Modus Global wristband. You know, the one I was wearing, the white one, because last week when I was at jiu-jitsu camp, I was rolling with someone, and it was just my limbs were super sweaty, and it was just coming off. I'm literally like, I'm literally wrestling with someone. I just took it and like threw it off to go get it later, and I never got it. So my Modus
priorities gotta win the role.
One of the OG Modus Global wristbands is somewhere in Mendocino, California. So if you're looking for it,
looking for an Easter egg, yeah. And on top of the new metrics and like trying to come up with new things that we can do with Pulse, that is one of the priorities for us is basically just making the current data and the current insights easier to use and more accessible for everybody. And some of that's just by like simplifying it. For example, I'll just start getting into some of the app changes. But basically, instead of when you first grab the sensor, you have to throw with it for a certain amount of days before you can get insights. We kind of took that off, so you can just basically buy your sensor, buy your strap, put it on, do your throws, and then day one you'll be able to get some insights from it. Simplifying the first basically dashboard page, so it just shows you the two things that we think matter most, and we're not going to show you ACR, or we're not going to show you acute workload and chronic workload and the acute to chronic workload ratio and all these things. We're just going to try to basically, the idea is we want to give you the information that matters, the information that you could do something with, and then you can dig deeper into these other features as you get started and collect more data. So basically, on this first page, you're just going to have your actual one-day workload, so which is basically how much workload you've accumulated over that day, and then the prescribed workload that we think you should basically be shooting for in a ballpark range. It's not one of those things. If you go over this prescribed workload,
your arm's dead.
Dog. Yeah,
it just falls off.
Yeah, that's just not what we're trying to do. We're just trying to basically give more information, give some suggestions on how you can build growing fitness in chronic workload to a point where when it matters, when it's time to go perform, you can be ready to do so because you're in the proper shape. So basically, the one day. Oh, I could just step back and talk about workload really quick too. Yeah. Workload, in our sense, is just defined as it's using the torque value. So the torque is like a measure of intent, basically. So if you have a torque of 70 Newton meters, that is adjusted into a normalized workload based on your height and weight. And then
we go on short, dude.
What's that? No. Oh, and then it's turned into a normalized workload unit, and then all of the throws in a specific day get added up. So that is your 1 day workload, and then that's tracked over time. You can see how one day your 1 day workload was 20, and one day it was 0 because it was a rest day, or one day it was 5 because it was a recovery day, and then you can kind of start to shape your throwing program like you need to there. Yeah. So get back off your vegan diet, dude.
Yeah, that's the update. I'm vegan now for at least another month.
Yeah. Anyways, so one of the other additions, one of the other ways to make it more simple, basically, is you weren't able to go back and in the app when you're using it, you weren't able to go back to previous days and see what what your workload was. You could see throw counts and high effort throws for back to a certain point, but basically we gave the functionality to you can open up a calendar and go back to any singular day and see exactly what your 1 day workload was and what your actual 1 day workload was to compare those two things. And then in live mode, we also made some of the tagging. This was a previous change, but we made some of the tagging a little bit easier. We actually went in one of our validations. We went through and talked about how basically the value of tagging and how you can, if you're on a time crunch or if you're like working with a large scale of athletes, you may not be able to tag every throw and work in live mode. And we basically did a validation to show that you can get reliable workload estimates without having to do tags, which just is another way to make it more simple.
User-friendly.
Yeah, more user friendly, more easy to apply at a larger scale. And basically the workflow just becomes charge your sensor, put your sensor on when you're about to throw, take your sensor off when you're done throwing, and sync your sensor, and then it'll all be available in the app. And then also
I got 3 things to bring up. I mean, yeah, this we're definitely a little bit all over the place on a bunch of this stuff, but I dig it. I was gonna say because 3 things. So one, I wanted to mention the edge report that we have developed on our end. We're just waiting for the track devs to connect it to their API, but we're gonna have a pretty cool Pulse edge report that's gonna be available to TrackX customers. That's gonna give things like average and expected workloads per track workouts, and then what it actually is, and then plot a bunch of things against each other. So like people will be able to see in tabular and graphical format where their numbers actually are versus where like everyone's numbers are versus like where their numbers should be given the time of the season, all these things. So that's gonna be really slick, I think, and it's gonna promote like people using Track and Pulse together because it's just gonna be like a go-to way to visualize everything, like put together the programming, put together the actual output from it, put together the actual results from it as well. If you enter like Velo, that's gonna be something that's gonna be returned, and we can model stuff off torque to Velo and kind of see where you lie on that end. The second I was going to say, which I'll want you to talk about a little bit more, was you kind of bearing the lead a little bit. Like now you're head honcho on Pulse stuff. So I was gonna encourage you to flex that a little bit and tell us what you got cooking. And then third thing I was gonna mention is completely blanked. So talk about the second thing while I think about the third thing.
A lot of it has to do with some track integration. So basically, when you threw with a Modus sensor or pulse sensor, previously you would go to Modus Dash and you would be able to see your basically a summary of your data over time, some long-term trends. If you did use your tags, you would be able to see if there was some difference in the metrics between when you were throwing on flat ground or when you were throwing off the mound. Things like that. And as a coach, like that was probably your go-to place to look at how your team workload is doing, and get a good idea of everybody's throwing program. But now we're moving that all into track, so it's in the same place. You can associate pulse profiles. So basically, if you have a track profile, you have a pulse profile, you do your throws, you make sure they get synced. That data automatically gets, after you associate the profiles, it gets synced into your track profile. And then on your track profile, you'll see a calendar basically. Right now, this is already live. You'll have throw count and high effort throws, which it was previously in Modus Dash as well. And then going forward, there's going to be a lot more trainer functionality, so you can manage multiple that. And then all the functionality that's in Dash right now, or that's in the previous Modus Dash, is going to be moved into track, as well as all of our future stuff. So the expected torque, which I'll go into in just a second, I'll describe in a little bit more detail. Caravan talked about some of the value there. But things like automatic velo pairing. So right now, if you want to have associated velos in Pulse, you basically have to open live mode, and every throw you have to input what the velo was. So that requires having a radar gun, being able to
radar, baby.
Yeah, looking at what the radar gun actually read, and then manually inputting that, and then going on and to your next throw. So that in the future is going to can be automatic. So if you have a pocket radar or some other measurement of velocity, basically those can get paired, and then you can have that can be added into the same database. So your track profile will have velos, it'll have all your Modus metrics or pulse rep metrics, and we'll be able to go forward and do things with that. Also currently live is the basically in Modus, or sorry, in the Pulse app, you'll be able to look at your track profile, and you can see your throwing program, and all that's going to be integrated. So long term, we want them to live in the same. Basically, your Pulse app is going to be the track app. Going to be able to look at your program, fill out data in your program in track, and also have access to all the workload information all in the same place.
Remembered what I was going to say. So two things. One, for people not super aware or not necessarily thinking about this, we do have, so we've had a Pulse API for a few months that obviously that connects to track, that lets us have a bunch of third parties like the Reds who are pretty deep in a Pulse right now. Do what you want with the data. You don't have to just use track to access it if you want to, tap into directly into the API. And also, like, one of the highest leverage uses of Pulse that we've talked about in the past, probably mentioned it already on this podcast, but something we're essentially making people that train with us remotely, people that train with us remotely will get Pulse subsidized, right? Pulse subsidized for them. And we have our edge reports are actually built with them, like keeping in mind how to best apply it for remote trainees and for remote trainers to get feedback on that. So we don't want Pulse to just be, Pulse has many uses, but we think one of the lowest hanging fruit kind of areas where we can go from 0 to 1 is just remote training. Like we're actually getting real workload data from remote training rather than some trainee going, yeah, I did some long toss today, arm felt good, and then what's a trainer supposed to say? Like, sounds good. Let me know if it starts itching up. Get your bullpen in tomorrow. Oh, got my bullpen in. Pretty good. Sat 92. Like, you can only do so much of that, obviously, even if you're a highly compliant trainer and trainee. So even just having good compliance longitudinal data on Pulse across like weeks, months, all that stuff, I'm just excited for them to actually be able to tell trends. Because honestly, I also think it's like a little bit part of the thing that makes remote training hard. Going through not having like that feedback right away, not necessarily having that qualitative feedback right away, either not having a trainer, not having a coach there. Yeah, Pulse can hopefully bridge the gap there.
Yeah, and I don't know necessarily if a lot of online programs use this, but Blast is the same thing for hitters and bat speed, or very similar. Like it's this objective point of feedback that the athlete can use on use it on a swing to swing basis, but basically it just gives you some description of your workout. There's been some case studies with the Reds where athletes are just throwing way more than they think they are, way more than they should be, and it helps kind of keep you in line to what your prescribed program is, to make sure you're ready for when you need to compete, when you need to throw an extra few pitches. Somebody just mentioned a reference to pitch counts in the chat, and we actually
I think I got it on the phone right now, dude. I think I Keith.
Yo,
what's up, Keith?
Stop, dude.
Oh, 121 pitches and he blooded you. Okay, word.
CEO Mike actually put together a banger thread of about Jack Leiter and how he, in the postseason when Vandy needed him the most, he was able to come off shorter rest and throw a lot of pitches, more pitches than most people would suggest. And basically what we're arguing here is that you can build up throwing fitness. Pulse allows you to track exactly where your throwing fitness is at any time.
Essentially.
Yeah, exactly.
120.
Exactly, because like 120 might be a good threshold or a good number to shut somebody down. But the next person might be able to go 130, or the next person maybe they should only go 90 pitches. So there's a lot of more variables at play, and being able to measure it all with Pulse just have a more individualized plan.
So in other words, the very obvious conclusion that different people can handle different workloads.
That's right.
Who'd have thunk it? Yeah, I was just gonna add that I think also like one of the things that I'm super excited about as well is, and I think I think we've barely scratched the surface here. I know we're collecting data to kind of run a pseudo pilot study, but also combining stuff like Pulse and Pitch AI,
Mhm.
it has been a little bit of a pipe dream internally that we've talked about, and we've talked about this for a while, but one of the main assets that pull like that pitch AI like lacks is some joint kinematics essentially.
Mhm.
So having that kind of stress value from Pulse paired with a bunch of biomech metrics from Pitch AI, who recently put out another validation update on how their results or on how accurate a bunch of their measurements are, which I recommend anybody interested to check out. Um,
We can put a link in the description
yeah,
as well.
I think actually Mike Song got a little bit saucy with some people in the comments.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Let's
yeah,
go.
yeah. But yeah. So I mean that kind of bootleg vocab assessment, Pitch AI and Pulse, obviously not doing anywhere near what a biomech assessment does, but one of them is worth like 2 Gs, and the other one much more affordable price. But I was gonna say one thing that you kind of referenced earlier in the podcast that I think is gonna that I think we're kind of like kicking off internally is position player throwing
Oh, yeah.
and collecting that with Pulse, because I mean we definitely are just scratching the surface on workload management and pitchers, but we are just scratching the surface on position player throwing, dude. I
Yeah.
mean, point me to anything online anywhere about like varying levels of stress and what to expect from position player throwing,
Yeah.
because so many position players have arm injuries or are clearly like not throwing as hard as they could, or are like not managing their workload.
Mhm.
There's I mean, not that I know of. Again, like comment in the chat if you guys have anything, but that is a completely unexplored field,
Y
and there are way more position players than pitchers. So
Yeah, and it's not even just about injuries. It's about the performance, which you mentioned, not throwing as hard as they could. You guys did that analysis a couple years ago
yeah,
now of catchers and
Lockdown.
how, yeah, about how arm strength and being able to throw the ball hard as a catcher is might be even more important than your ability to transfer and get the ball out of your hand, basically. And yeah, position players. This is very common in youth. We have the Driveline Academy working with youth baseball and travel ball basically,
mhm.
and it's a really tough problem to solve for them because they have their best athletes are probably, if they're pitching, they're probably also playing shortstop or catching
Your
or
best athletes
throwing a
run through
lot.
puberty early, bro.
Anyways, the and just like being able to have a measurement for how many throws did they make off the mound and not off the mound, because I was just talking to OC, shout out Michael O'Connell. He was talking about how he has some athletes who will have an extremely high 1 day workload and might only throw 30 pitches or whatever. Like if you were to just look at these two pitch counts, you would assume that, or say if maybe athlete one threw 60 pitches, athlete two threw 20, but athlete two played shortstop for 2 more games in the same day. What do you think their workloads are going to look like? The guy who only threw 20 pitches probably actually had a much higher 1 day workload, and his training the next day or in the next 2 days should probably reflect that. So I think that's really really important for position players for sure.
Also, what we got? Mason McRae
I know.
retracted his message,
I
dude.
know.
Mason, come on, dog. Drop some juice, dude.
Oh, what do you got?
Yeah, we're out here exposing ourselves, live streaming,
Right.
holding ourselves completely accountable to whatever we say from pause to pause. You know we're both loose cannons, dude. I'm not the only loose cannon. Lindley's more of a loose cannon.
Nice.
Um,
I'm down to. Do you have anything else? Anything else big?
on Pulse or in general?
Just impulse or for this episode 61.
Yeah, no, just like I guess yeah. Moments of anything.
Yeah,
What
we
were you gonna
touched
pivot
on it
to?
all over the place. First episode back. Obviously, a little bit rust to knock off, but good to be back. Basically, TLDR. Theme of the podcast. Pulse is or Modus is now Pulse. Pulse is much easier to use. Getting some feedback about. Really, it's just as simple as getting the sensor and start throwing with it. Just put it in the strap. strap on your arm and start to manage your workload.
But,
So
but going forward, and maybe this is something that maybe I'm putting you slightly on the spot. I don't know. I hope not completely on the spot. But obviously we talked about some things that we're hoping to drop in the next couple months.
mhm.
But even more long term, vision wise, did you want to talk about how what you see? What are some longer term plans you see with Pulse, and how you're gonna like kind of track that? I know we recently pushed like a Pulse tab in our BizDash platform to kind of track KPIs, usage, a
Mhm.
bunch of stuff. Like, what are you looking for? How are things going right now? What are you looking for? What's kind of your longer term vision, Pulse?
Yeah, so summer's a little bit of a down period, but a lot of people are using Pulse. Really excited about the launch and all the new features. There are a couple things that we still have to work out as far as some bugs in the app, but it's just going to be more work towards making it easier to incorporate not only Pulse but other data sources as well. So again, just integrating
Yeah,
velocity data,
I,
integrating track workouts, and everything, all the data that's collected in track.
one of the things we talked about, and I want to just like sit on this for a second, just because this is like I think one of the easiest kind of use cases that people that already run a data driven system and want to get Pulse and kind of plug that in
Mhm.
will look for is integration of tracking. Because if
Yeah.
you have Rhapsody on TrackMan or Yakratech or whatever, then there's no need to track velos. You just sync everything, and you can already do that through Track. You need to get a little bit more creative and kind of have probably data analysts on your staff. But and I know there's like features on the app that kind of lets you do that, but nothing like I think we still need to iron out like the actual integration process and make it really flexible for technologies and make it
Yeah.
more tech agnostic. I think that's probably like going to be a focus area too, right?
Yeah, for sure. That's what I was kind of just getting to. So just like making it simple to use Pulse, but also use everything
Yeah.
else that is like can parlay on top of the workload and on top of the torque data. Track can be a one-stop shop for everything to put everything together, pair it all, and give you a report, basically a picture, a snapshot of your throwing program, of your performance, of your training. So that includes velocity data. That could include TrackMan data or Rapsodo. If you're a college athlete and you have access to TrackMan data, you could just maybe upload that into Track, and then
To
that
Yakker,
gets
bro, they're all Yakker.
yeah.
All the colleges are Yakker now.
Good point. Basically, you just upload that data to Track, or Track just has access to that data because you paired your profiles, and then it'll spit out this paired analysis of a good snapshot of your performance or your training. So I think that like long term, it's just that I think that's a long term goal.
Oh, interesting.
Mason McCray asks, when do y'all think defense is going to be able to be quantified in college? Seems like without Hawkeye, it's not possible. Definitely.
That is tough because I mean, so many
Good
defensive
question.
metrics.
Not related to
Yeah,
Pulse at all, but I'm
yeah,
glad this is a good question.
I mean, dude, just put Pulse on everyone, and then we'll add
Yeah, that's a good point.
we'll add
That's
a
a good point.
defensive, we'll add a UZR metric. No, yeah. I mean, that's a good question, and I definitely don't have a discrete answer. I'm also a little bit bearish because defensive metrics that we have now with MLB data, with like you know public and private analysts working on metrics to derive defensive value for people that are worth tens of millions of dollars, and we still struggle to get a metric that takes like less than 1,000 batted balls or whatever it is to
Mhm.
stabilize. Like I think people that are pretty deep into sabermetrics know defensive metrics are way less reliable than offensive metrics. And if you even just look at Fangraphs, or I mean, again, I'm not looking at one right now, but check out like Mike Trout's defense. It like flip flops year to year. The first couple of years, I think it's stabilized as a positive one in the last couple of years. But point being, like that, it's already really hard to do at the MLB level. So college, I don't know if there's any college specific defensive tricks either. Like I'm curious. I mean, it's also super hard to actually get um Trackman data for everything, or I mean, now soon to be Yakker data and air to play by play. Like that itself took a decent bit of effort on our part when we were trying out C-War metric. So, and then you have to have all the colleges data share everything. Um, yeah,
Do you think
I don't know if I mean like a good defensive metric. I don't know if anytime soon.
do you think the move is to just try to quantify other things like aspects of the actual player? Like if he has this arm strength, so this is a good, like that could be a good explain some of the variance in defensive performance or like some like, I mean, there's like error percentage or things like that.
I mean for defensive metrics, for advanced stats, like you can probably use it to see who's absolute ass and who's not. You know, like but like the large middle portion of people that like don't necessarily stand out or profile as like above average versus average. That might be a good way to handle it. Like I wouldn't be surprised if a couple years down the road we're running a combine with
athleticism screenings.
I was gonna say I wouldn't be surprised if we were running a combine where position player like velo was being recorded, lateral quickness, like something like that. Because especially, I mean, someone gets hurt, and this is a couple games during a season, then you're really not rolling with a lot of data. And then, I mean, at that point, just like scout qualitative notes are going to be like pretty high up on what you use. But I wouldn't be surprised at all if something like arm strength or something is going to be relied on. This guy's a good arm. Who knows if he's a good defender, average defender, or below average? He has a good arm and he has good lateral quickness, so we can probably develop him.
Yeah, for sure.
I was going to ask one quick question on Pulse future stuff. Not even just Pulse future stuff, but and I'm being completely serious. Would you be, because our main app developer is in Argentina? Would you be down to go on a work trip to Argentina to say what's good to have developer?
Fernando, I hope you're watching this. I think the move is for Fernando to just come up here, see the place.
You could do that. Roll with me to Argentina.
Nice.
I was gonna say we got a couple of minutes now because I'm about to run a meeting in here in like 9 minutes, but. Did you want to kind of touch on? I mean, we had some other personal life stuff in the last couple of months.
Absolutely not. Anyways, thank you guys to all the interns that are right outside the door watching and being our best loyal fan base. I appreciate you guys.
Dude, what do you mean? We got 7 concurrent viewers.
That's
Mason,
I think
McRae and 6 girls.
Yeah, no. I think Mason and then 5 other interns or 6 other interns, baseball ops and baseball, sports science, and data science interns might be our audience right now. But anyways, until probably not next week. Yeah. Probably not next week, but in a few weeks, we're hoping to make this a regular thing. We'll cut this thing up. Hopefully make some.
Yeah. By the way, I'm down to help out as much as I need to. I know I didn't do shit for the setup of this, and we had to have Brady teach us stuff, but next episode should be smoother.
Oh, good.
This is basically episode 0.
Yeah, let's go. All right. Well, episode 0 of season 2, baby.
Oh, season 3, dude. We had a very short season 2.
All right, guys. We'll see you in the next one. Peace.
Peace.